lovely people, welcome back to our channel. This is Honeycomb Cake Studio. I'm Carla, and this is part 3 of our 3-part Café au Lait Dahlia tutorial. So if you have watched parts 1 and 2, you will have gotten to this point. This is the assembled dahlia that still needs a calyx and still needs some coloring. So let's go ahead and make the calyx. I have made a darker green color here, which I used for the leaves, with some forest green Americolor in addition to the 3 colors I just showed you. So I'm putting that aside, and I'm using the lighter color here for the calyx. And the lighter color was just the electric green, the egg yellow, and a tiny bit of the chocolate brown by Americolor. And those were gel colors that I added to my gum paste. Many dahlias have a kind of bright green calyx like this. I'm going to cut out 2 shapes using the 6-petal daisy cutter that I used in part 1 of this tutorial to make the inner petals for the dahlia center. So we're just repurposing that cutter to make the calyx. You will want to stretch out the arms of your calyx with your ball tool. So do that for both shapes. Then flip them over and use a Dresden tool, just dragged down the back of each arm of your calyx to create some movement and create a point. Then flip the shape over and create some veins and some texture using the sharp, pointy end of your Dresden tool. So do that to the second cutout as well. I'm using water as my glue. You can use egg whites or edible glue. Just make sure that your water or edible glue is not too generously applied. You just want the calyx to be tacky, not too wet. So thread your first calyx cutout down the stem of your dahlia. And as you can see here, I'm just pressing it down to adhere it to the back of those wired petals, that wired outer row. I'm using my Dresden tool to press it down and then just buff it so that it sticks to the stem, and threading on the second cutout and just attaching the arms of this calyx shape in between the ones from the previous row. You can add a little bit of cornstarch if things get sticky. I have done that here just before using my fingers to smooth out the attachment point between the gum paste and the stem. I'm also just creating a little bit of movement by fluffing some of the arms of the calyx with my fingers. Let's now add some color to the dahlia. So I've got a baby pink here by Crystal Colors, a mushroom brown by CK Products, and then I'm using green grape, which is a soft green from Elite Color, and a little bit of cornstarch as well, so that I can blend my colors together. I'm blending a bit of the mushroom brown with the baby pink color, which is actually more of a dusty rose, honestly. Not really a pastel pink at all, but I'm using the mushroom to warm up and dull the pink even more, and then I'm applying that as a shading color to the center of my dahlia, and also using it as a depth enhancer. So I'm now switching, as you can see here, to a smaller, even more tapered brush. I'm using more of the mushroom, and I'm adding more depth by targeting the color right into those open petals. So as you remember, as we made the dahlia, we made those very distinctive petals that were folded over at the base, and which have a lot of internal shadow and dimension, and we want to highlight that. So you're going to go and augment and accentuate the work that you already did to make that beautiful petal shape by adding some of the darker brown mushroom color and some of the pink into the depths of those open petals. So that color, the mushroom brown, can also get targeted at your calyx to give your calyx a bit of dimension and make it look a little aged. I think that can be really beautiful, although most of the time people aren't going to see the calyx because the flower is going to be facing outward on the cake. Nonetheless, you can take some of the pink and brown mixture and just touch it to the edges of the petals on the back side of your flower. I'm now blending some of the brown, the mushroom color, with the green and just touching a little bit in the very center. And then taking that green extremely softly and extremely subtly, and just touching it on the edges of those petals here and there. So this is where the art comes in, and this is a bit of a subtle dusting job. You're not trying to make your dahlia look green in any way, but you're trying to bring a little bit of dimension and a different color to certain spots on the petals, which will make your flower look more lifelike. Speaking of lifelike, we're going to make a mix of chocolate brown gel, electric green gel, and some vodka. You can use lemon extract or vanilla extract or even rose water for this. And we're turning that into an edible paint that we're going to use to glaze our dahlia leaves. I tested mine, as you can see there, on a little shop towel and decided it was too brown, so I added more of the electric green. I'm now taking this flat brush that's been saturated with my edible paint, and I'm just painting it in broad strokes across the top surface of my leaf. I typically leave these leaves matte on the back, as you can see, because they look more realistic that way. And I'm just going to paint another one for you here to continue the demo. It's pretty simple, as you can see, and it's very effective, and the shine from the wetness of your edible paint and the alcohol mixture will last a little while. So if you're going to style these onto a cake within the next few days, the leaves will still be shiny. Let's go on and make leaf sprays out of our leaves. I am adding a 22 gauge wire here just to my biggest leaf to strengthen the stem, and I'm taping down about 1 inch with my half-width green floral tape. I'm going to bring in one of the smaller leaves and just angle it to the left, as you can see here, or rather my left, your right, and then bringing in another of the smaller leaves, taping that in directly opposite the small leaf that I added before, and then I'm just going to tape down the rest of the stem, or at least partway down the stem, depending on how long you need the wire to be, because you might need to trim it for insertion into your cake. And then for good measure, I usually tape one more time down the stem just to add a bit of bulk to the stem and secure everything in place. And then you can bend the wire and mess around with it as you like to make it look a little more natural. For the second leaf spray, I'm going to tape a little bit down the stem of my small leaf. I'm going to add a 22 gauge wire to strengthen the stem, and then at the point where I added the 22 gauge wire, so about 3/4 of an inch down, I'm going to bring in a large leaf and tape that in, and then tape down the stem, and I'm going to trim the stem so it's reasonably short. And as you can see here, you now have 2 different styles of leaf spray, and you can place them with your flower, depending on your project, in a way that suits the look of the cake. So you may want a smaller leaf stem, you may want this longer leaf stem, depending on whether you want to use the leaves to create movement or not, or whether you want to have just some short leaves tucked behind the flower. At some point while I was doing all of this leaf painting and color dusting on the flower, I decided that I greatly regretted using the dark forest green floral tape on my dahlia stem, so I'm just taping in a length of more of the bright green here. This is the part that's going to be sticking out of the cake that people will see. So I'm taking the same paint that I used for the leaves and just on an almost dry brush, just adding a bit more color to that stem to blend everything together. And here it is. We have made it to the end of the 3-part dahlia tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate the incredible amount of support and kind comments and feedback that we've been getting on our channel, especially lately. It seems like something has happened and the channel has really started growing and gaining more views. So thank you so much. It's super exciting that our videos are reaching more of you. Please leave us a comment below if there's something else that you'd like us to make that we haven't made yet that you want to see. And thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.